Hi guys, you're gonna hear a murder of crows in the background. We have about 5 crows that hang out together, mostly in my backyard, and it seems like my neighbor's backyard as well, but they cause quite a racket in the morning. But I think this is the best light to show you my rustic garden bed, which has gotten a facelift. So I wanted to show you what's going on. And the first thing you might notice is that the edging has been changed. And it's been changed to long logs. We had some tree work done, and I asked the fellows if they would line the edge of my bed with some of the logs, and they exceeded my expectations and really did a beautiful job. And I think it looks so much better than my mess of sticks that I kept trying to weave in, some of which were deteriorating, but I think these will last a good long while. So doesn't it look nice, guys, with the new logs on it? And it inspired me to add a few new things in. A lot of the things are very small, so they won't look like much for a couple months or even until next year. Some of the perennials might bulk up. But let me show you what I have added. So come on over here. We'll start with this African marigold. And my local garden center only had one. I would have bought more. It looked a little distressed, but it's already perked up in a couple of days. So that should be a nice big orange bush by the time September rolls around or so. It should look really nice. And guys, I haven't had a lot of luck growing marigolds from seeds because I have a lot of bunnies bouncing around here. They have even nibbled on the marigold seedlings, but once they're larger, sometimes more mature seedlings don't get as bothered as some of the younger ones. Maybe they're not as tender. But let me show you down here. I have a little bit of purple basil. Not looking too purple, but I transplanted that over from another area of my garden. Those 3 transplants, so hopefully those will fill in. I have about 4 areas of oregano back here, and they've all been cut back and dried and harvested. So they're just flushing back out, and it's actually amazing how fast they'll flush back out after you do a harvest. And then this I'm particularly excited about. I popped this in yesterday. This is a lemon thyme silver queen. And I'm showing you the label here. And I just picked that up at Home Depot. But look how pretty that is, guys. It's beautiful. And I wish you could smell it. It smells very fragrant. So a lot of the varieties of flowers I put in this rustic garden bed are fragrant varieties that are called rabbit resistant. So they're labeled rabbit resistant, like the marigold. It's very fragrant, and things like thyme and oregano also are very fragrant, and the rabbits don't tend to eat them. So, you know, when the heat hits this bed, it's going to be a very fragrant area. And here's a little bit more of the purple opal basil that I popped in. These are just cuttings from other areas of my garden. And I have a few small seedlings here. We'll see if they make it, of marigolds. And they have just volunteered on their own. I think I had, there's quite a few here. I hope you can see them. But I think I had marigolds here last year, and obviously some seeds dropped. So let's see how strong they are. And if you notice some oddly placed tomato plants, that's just where volunteers grew, and I popped a cage over it. So they haven't actually been placed in the design. They've placed themselves. And I'm very excited about what's in the middle here. I grew these from seed, and these are called Agastachy, but I have one there, one over there, and one over here, and it's gosh, I think it's called, it's Baker's Creek, and it's Agastachy Sunset something. So if I have the package, I'll put it up on the screen so you can see. But it smells like licorice, and I was so excited because yesterday when I was out here, a hummingbird flew by and kind of checked it out. Even though it's not blooming, the foliage is still has an aroma, and again, another fragrant plant for the rustic garden bed. Then I have a pot back there that I popped a butternut squash seed in. So that's looking good, still small, but doing fine. And it looks like we have some kind of squash growing here, and I'm not sure what kind has seeded itself, but we'll see. I did not plant that one. But isn't the Agastachy pretty, guys? So beautiful. And then I just popped in a little bit of coleus here. It was just a cutting from another place. That'll fill in. And I have a couple more. I added some thyme next to my other thyme that I was growing. These were thyme that I popped in a pot from the grocery store. So these look a little taller than the other type of thyme. But now I'm going to have two different types of thyme. So I'm very excited. I have the lemon thyme on the other side, the silver queen, and then I have these common thyme. So I'm excited about that. And then back here, and guys, all of these things need to put on a little size in order for it to be a spectacular garden, but I'm very excited to have these set up. But that one back there, and then the small one next to it are butterfly weed. So that is tall and prolific. It also puts out nice seed heads, which always plant themselves, but it has tall flowers that are orange and beautiful. And I had those at one time in another part of my garden, and they lived up to their name. They attracted a lot of butterflies when they bloomed. So I'm very excited about those. And I also grew those two plants from seed. So I'm going to have to wait on those, and probably next year they'll be looking a lot better. And behind it, I just put in some of the Dark Prince coleus cuttings, and that pot is starting to fill in. And behind it, I have some sedum cuttings. And if you didn't see my video before, I do have some pots and some logs scattered throughout the bed because I'm trying to improve the soil. I'm going to come back around on this side. But if you put things down on top of the soil, it holds moisture in, and all kinds of critters come, including worms, and they leave their castings and enrich the soil. So that was my plan on improving the soil without having to bring in bags and bags of new soil. And this is a low-growing Adjuranum, and it's so beautiful. I don't know if the bright blue is showing on there, but it has kind of like thread leaf flowers. I think they're so pretty. But it's also a rabbit-resistant plant, according to research. And it's a nice pop of color. So I like to add in blues where I have beds with oranges and reds. I think it's a nice contrast. And then right next to that, it's a little hard to see. It's quite fine still, but I had a pot of garlic chives, which I had seeded up, and I sort of spread them around through here, and they looked quite terrible for a few days, but I'm happy to see that they've perked up. So that'll be a nice thick clump there, which hopefully will do a bit of spreading. And this is an annual, by the way, as is the Marigold. But sometimes they self-seed. I had an Adjuranum self-seed, a tall variety in another area of my garden. So I'm hoping some of these annuals will seed for next year, and we'll see what pops up. And then right in front of me, this tall plant is called a Cardinal Flower, and my friend Lori gave me this. This gets very tall, red blooms on it when it blooms. And I did cut it back just so it would bush out thicker. So I do have some new growth on there. And I put the cuttings in a container, one of my containers that's around the garden. And they seem to have rooted. They look good, so I'm excited that that might make more plants. I wasn't sure if I could do it with that variety. But then over here I added some Genovese compact basil, and I cut the tops off that and I'm rooting them inside, so I'm pretty much doubling my basil. And as it gets tall, I'm going to just continue to root it throughout the growing season and add more clumps throughout this bed. And this bed gets partial sun, so I really have to be careful with what I pick. The area down toward the end does end up getting more sun, so I can put partial sun varieties down that way. But as I move down here, I'm starting to think about varieties that do okay with some shade. And I said that just as I'm showing you my first zinnia that's blooming. And this one got quite eaten up in another area of my garden by some bugs. There's bug damage on there. But I did decide to put it back here, hoping that it will do better. But other than that, some of the plants I have put down here have been more shade-tolerant varieties. And one of those plants is a columbine. I popped 3 of those in here. And this one, I don't know what happened. Obviously, some type of worm has eaten it. But it's still a healthy plant, and I popped it in here, 3 of them, to make a nice clump. And I won't have to worry about the shade. It's going to do just fine in the shady conditions and give me beautiful purple blooms in the spring. And these were given to me by my friend Lori. I moved them from a pot from another area of my yard, so I'm happy about that. And then again, these aren't shade tolerant necessarily, but some zinnias must have been here last year because I have some zinnias popping up. And there's a little spot of sun where they're also popping up. And there's chives down here, which don't do great, but they still grow. So I'll leave them right there and harvest from those throughout the year. And then here's 2 more of my Agastachy plants, which are famous for attracting hummingbirds. And one over here. This one got a little bit broken, I think. But hopefully that's going to look just fine next year. But I have a clump of 3 right there. And I think those are the plants that I'm most excited about. I grew them from seed, and they're just supposed to attract hummingbirds and butterflies, and I just am very excited about them. I think I'm just going to prune this one plant, give it a chance to bush back out. But it smells so good, I wish you guys could smell it. Here's a little red yarrow, and this type of yarrow grows more like a bush than the white yarrow. That sprawls a little more, so I really like this compact type of yarrow. But sometimes you have to come into this garden and look closely for the flowers while the plants are still so young. On this side I have some established chrysanthemums. I do have some sedum that I put in from cuttings last year, and one this year. I'm working on a cutting there. But I think this has been a little bit of a wet season for them. They're not as happy as they could be. And then I do have some salvia, which blooms earlier in the spring, and I chopped it back and I expect it'll bloom again, and that's tall purple spiky flowers. And then I do have some flowers here that are getting ready to bloom, and I think this is some type of rudbeckia. Again, this is something Lori gave me, so I'm looking forward to that, and I believe those will be yellow flowers, and that was planted last year. So guys, I hope you like the new edging on the bed and all of the new additions, which, like I said, will look a lot better in a couple months, and some of them might even take another season to fill in. But I was really excited that this herb and flower bed is really coming along, and I'm improving the dirt. I'm adding new and exciting things. I'm adding some more shade-tolerant varieties, and I think it's going to really look nice in the end. I had been very busy working on other areas of my garden, and it felt good to give this area some love. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.